All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the code that powers pretty much the entire digital economy. We're talking about blockchain token standards. These are the fundamental rules that let digital assets even exist, let alone interact and create whole new worlds online. So let's get into the code that's quietly building our digital future.
So you've definitely seen pictures like this one, right? They've sold for millions, they've been all over the news. But what are they really? I mean, beyond the art, they represent a unique, verifiable piece of digital property. And the how that's even possible, it's all in the code. Specifically, the token standard it's built on. But before we can even talk about the standards, we gotta start with the basics. What even is a token?
Okay, so think of it like this. At its heart, a token is just a digital stand-in for something valuable. It could be money, could be art, could even be a ticket to an event. It lives on a blockchain, which is what makes it super secure and transparent. And the whole thing is run by a smart contract, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a piece of code that automatically enforces the rules. It's like a digital rulebook that can't be changed.
All right, to really get a handle on these rulebooks, we've got to go back to the beginning. The first major standard that just changed everything. This is the one designed to make digital assets behave just like money. Let's talk about ERC-20.
First, we need to get one super important concept down: fungibility. It sounds complicated, but it's simple. Think about a dollar bill in your pocket. You could swap it for my dollar bill and nobody would care. They're identical, they're interchangeable, that's fungible. Now, think about your ticket to a concert tonight. It's got your specific seat, a specific date, it's totally unique. You can't just swap it for any other ticket. That's non-fungible. And that one difference right there is what splits the entire token universe in two.
So that brings us to 2015. The ERC-20 standard pops up to solve exactly this problem for the digital world. It was basically a universal blueprint for creating these fungible tokens. The key idea was that every single token created with this standard had to be identical, totally interchangeable, and divisible into smaller pieces, just like a dollar can be broken down into sets. And the really cool thing about this standard is just how flexible it is. Because these ERC-20 tokens act just like money, they can be used to represent pretty much anything that has a quantifiable value. You see them as in-game currencies, as loyalty points, and of course, as stablecoins that are pegged to real-world money like the US dollar.
So when you boil it all down, that ERC-20 smart contract is basically a little robot with three main jobs. First, it has to be able to create new tokens, which is called minting. Second, it has to be able to handle moving those tokens between people. And third, it has to keep a perfect, unchangeable record of who owns how much. That's it.
But what's really clever is how these tokens actually get from point A to point B. The standard has two main ways of doing it. The transfer function is the simple one. That's just like you sending money directly from your account to a friend's. But transfer from is where the magic happens for apps. It's kind of like when you save your credit card on a website. You're giving that application permission to spend a certain amount of your tokens for you. This one function is what makes the whole world of decentralized apps possible. So, okay, ERC-20 totally nailed digital money. But what about digital stuff? That unique concert ticket or a one-of-a-kind painting? That needed a completely different set of rules. And that's exactly what the next standard was all about. It literally gave birth to NFTs, creating a way to have true, provable ownership over unique digital items. Or, as a lot of people started calling them, the digital collectibles of the 21st century. And that standard is ERC 721, which showed up around 2018. You can think of it as the total opposite of ERC 20. With this one, every single token is unique. It's one of a kind, it has its own ID, and you can trace its entire history of ownership right there on the blockchain. And man, did this unlock a huge creative explosion. All of a sudden, artists can make digital work that was verifiably rare. From pixelated punks to animated cats, ERC 721 gave creators the power to prove that their digital work, which could once be copied infinitely, now had a real scarcity and real ownership. Okay, but here's the secret sauce, the detail that a lot of people get wrong. The actual picture, the JPEG or the GIF, it's almost never stored on the blockchain itself. It's just way too big and would be crazy expensive. Instead, the token on the blockchain just contains a link, and that link points to a little text file, the metadata, that describes the NFT and tells your browser where to go to find the actual artwork. So have you ever wondered how they make like 10,000 of these things and each one is unique? Well, it's this awesome mix of art and code.
It usually starts right here in a program like Photoshop or Illustrator, where an artist draws out all the different possible traits as separate layers. Different hats, different backgrounds, different eyes, stuff like that. Then a developer comes in and writes the recipe, the code. This script defines how those layers can be stacked, what combinations are allowed, and most importantly, it assigns rarity. It's the code that says, okay, a crown is going to be way rarer than a baseball cap. And then you hit go. The program just runs, mixing and matching all those layers based on the rules, and boom, you get a whole collection of thousands of images, each one with a totally unique combination of traits. And that's how these massive generative art collections are born, all thanks to the ERC 721 standard. Okay, quick recap. We've got a standard for money, ERC 20, and we've got a standard for unique collectibles, ERC 721. But what if you need both at the same time, like in a video game? Well, that's when things start to get messy and really inefficient.
Yeah, just think about a game for a second. You'd need one smart contract to manage your big pile of gold coins. That's an ERC 20. And then you'd need a totally different contract for that epic, one-of-a-kind sword you just found. That's an ERC 721. Every time you add a new kind of item, you'd need a new contract. It's slow, it's expensive, and for developers, it's a total headache. And that's where ERC 1155 comes in to save the day. It's this awesome hybrid standard that was designed to fix this exact problem. It lets a developer manage everything, your fungible gold coins, your non-fungible magic sword, and even semi-fungible things, like a stack of 50 identical health potions, all from inside a single smart contract.
And the difference this makes is just massive. You can now bundle a bunch of different items, like 100 gold coins, 2 potions, and that sword, and send them all in one single transaction. That's called a batch transfer, and it saves a ton of money on fees. It also allows for atomic swaps, which means you can trade your sword for someone else's shield directly, no middleman, with the code guaranteeing the trade. It's just way, way more efficient, and it's perfect for something complex like a game. So, okay, we've covered 3 different rulebooks for digital stuff, ERC 20, 721, and 1155. But why does any of this actually matter? What's the big takeaway here? Well, it all comes down to this. These standards are like a universal language. They're like the USB port for digital assets. Because everyone agrees to build their tokens following these same rules, any wallet, any marketplace, any game can immediately understand and interact with any token out there. Without that common language, none of this works. It would all just be a bunch of separate digital islands that couldn't talk to each other. So you see, these standards aren't the final product. They are the fundamental building blocks. They're like digital Legos. They've already given us decentralized finance, a digital art revolution, and completely new kinds of games. So the really exciting question is, with these powerful tools in our hands, what are we going to build with them next? Thanks for tuning in.